First up, going to go with the man from Maitland, Timmy Mallon. Tim, a lot of people may not know him, particularly current Victorian coaches and stuff that make up a lot of this call. But Tim's, a brilliant basketball mind. He's the director of coaching at Newcastle Basketball, Hunter Sports High, head of basketball as well in Newcastle. But's been in the NBL previously and long time assistant coach at Australian junior national team level. There was almost a 15-year span, I think, where Tim was involved in different capacities. So, heavily involved at that level. Long time involvement with New South Wales state program as well. I've probably missed a few things off there, Coach, but hopefully that covers off a little bit.
Great hair.
Great hair as well.
Yeah.
Very great hair. I'm going to throw to Corey, who's got a question for you, Tim, first.
Thank you, Reese.
No worries. G'day, Tim.
G'day, Corey.
For jumping on and answering questions. My question, Tim, just regarding amongst junior programs, what advice do you sort of have for your age group coaches and how they might be able to get involved with mentoring some of the coaches of lower teams, younger coaches within their age group or beyond? Just about that sort of leadership role they might take on as their age group head coach.
Thank you. I suppose why you should do it is because everything I've ever got was from another coach. And that idea of what we're doing here tonight, sharing knowledge, helping the next person is just central to the whole notion of coaching and teaching and sharing. And I think if you're not prepared to do that, there's kind of something wrong. There's something about the fundamental motivation of why you're doing it. I think that the sharing of knowledge and wisdom and passing on of what we have is just part of the fabric of being a good coach, a good club person, a decent human being. As coaches, we're teachers, and we've got to come out of that sort of silo thinking. And when there's someone in our club who's part of it, then it can't be just about your own little group. I think it then becomes part of it, because everything that I have in basketball, I have from someone else. I watched, I learned, someone gave me things. My club here in Maitland gave me a pair of shoes when I was like 17. I've never forgot it. They gave me a pair of basketball shoes because I had sticky tape around the end of mine. And that sort of act is, goes on. We pass it forward, so I think that's where it's at. It's about the human aspect of it for me. Yeah. What
are some strategies to attack switching defense? Because obviously it's quite prevalent, has been quite prevalent over the last period, on-ball, off-ball screens. What sort of some things you can do to attack switching or you recommend?
Yeah, well, obviously it depends on your personnel and who you have and what you want to exploit. But I suppose with the prevalence of switching now, we're seeing it in across lots of levels, and whether or not you want to punish that switch, obviously by that, if it's say an on-ball pick, for me it's sort of like come and screen and just a touch screen and a bit like the ghost screen sort of thing, slip it. I think that can prevent a few issues, can cause a few issues there. But also I'm a huge believer that, you've got to reject the on-ball a lot. And if you can look to reject it as much as you can as a guard, I really think that places a lot of pressure on the on-ball defender to force the player to the screen if they're going to switch it. And the thing that stuffs up switching is if the ball handler on the on-ball, if the ball handler doesn't use the screen and goes the other way, that's, in my experience, I've had that conversation with when we're switching and it goes wrong, you say, yeah, but you've got to send them to the screen, and that's the issue. So I'd be looking to do that. I'd be looking to go screen and just sort of touch and slip it. But then beyond that, obviously, there's some things around posting the big, rolling them in, and then either looking high-low, throwing it back to the wing, and then getting it back. It's sort of complicated to do it without to show you without the diagramming. But I would say on an on-ball scenario, quite simply, is to reject the screen and encourage your players to reject screens and give them that choice.
Yep.
And to slip, to touch and slip out of it and force some indecision, breed some confusion within the defense if they're deciding to do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't add too much. I concur with all of that, and with the skill development and the mentality, encouraging that poise, to recognise the fact that a lot of that is to hurry you up and to noise and to create that sense of panic within you. So, we talk about like maybe labelling the options like an A, B, and a C look.
Yeah.
If we can go down the line, that's our A pass. If we can kick the ball ahead, that's great. If we can't, we look middle, and then we look C pass, we look back. Same as what Hannah was saying, we overload. So sometimes we just talk about maybe sort of categorising their reads for them as a younger player, where to look in which sequence. Sometimes can sort of help them make that choice. And then, of course, as Hannah was saying, there's a whole bunch of different things you do. Run the 5 long, and then once we reverse it, the 5 for us will often lift up and be that pressure release down the weak side of the floor. Screening the zone is a really interesting thing to do. Having the 3-man throw the ball out and having the guards, so you've got not just leaving it with the 4-man or the big. So, a lot of teams like to run that headhunter sort of defense with a 4, get it out of the one's hands, run it into the 4-man, let the 4-man bring it. And all of it's just designed to disrupt you and get you out of the stuff. So I would say with that idea that you do need to be prepared to be able to get into your offensive alignments and schemes through a player other than your one, especially if you're going to come. So if that's like, okay, if that happens, then we're just going into dribble handoff with you. Or if we throw it to the 5, you'll scoot around and get a handoff. So, recognizing how you can, get into the schemes and shapes of offense that you like. And I do think that, and I'm not sure it'd be interesting to see what Hannah and Mick think about this as well, but I do think we're a bit preoccupied in Australia of running pattern transitions, whereas in Europe, it's really not the way of basketball. Let's just get the ball, occupy the middle lane, and if they happen to just take their time to get it up there, once they're there, then we'll run stuff. We seem to be having to think that if we don't run down the floor in a very precise shape all the time, then we're out of it. And that tends to freak us out a bit. Yeah. And I think my personal view is that, I've certainly tried to move away from a lot of that in my own coaching. Some sort of, I think that causes some trouble because, if suddenly the recognizable typical shape isn't presented to us, then, we're tripping out. And you don't know what to do.
Just to unpack that a bit more, you're talking about like running the traditional floor spots and lanes, 5 and 2 and 3 have to be running the outside lanes. Is that what you're sort of touching on? Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And one of the things that, and again, I'm interested by the other coaches, one of the things that the European system and in cadet basketball and junior basketball is they're very good at putting their 4 in different spots on the court. And this causes a lot of issues for a lot of teams, especially when you're tagging on pick and rolls and things. I'm not sure what other coaches think about that. I do want to say something about this, and I think it's really important because as Hannah said, and we all know, and I think it's a really good question. I think it's an exceptionally important question. I think as a developing coach, this is a very important area for coaches to think about a lot. And as Hannah said, to make sure that, you can figure out a way to defend this and to use it. I think you've got to figure out a way of using it for more than just the one man, the ball handler. I think there are ways of, and again, if you run a zipper action or an Iverson cut action to get another player to get a catch in a spot where now we can go pick and roll with a different player, I think that's a really nice way of doing it. I'm a big fan of, you know, a zipper cut action or a shallow cut to a lifting on ball for more than the one. You know, I think sometimes we tend to, now the other kids space out. So I do think from a coaching perspective, it's very important that you get across pick and roll and you research and you think and how to coach it, as Mick was saying, get those ingredients, get steps. I mean, I'm an English teacher and I'm still figuring out how to teach writing. Writing, that process of what can I do? How can I teach this a little bit better? And it's part of what I love about coaching basketball, because I'm still searching for how can I teach that a bit better? And I'm making notes here from the other coaches tonight, because I'm going to take that, I'm going to use it. So that idea, it's a really important thing. And I just want to pick up on one more point of what Mick said, and I might shut up for a bit then. I work with a great coach. I was very lucky to work with a coach called Adrian Hurley. Now, those are the coaches there that don't know who Adrian Hurley was. He coached the Australian Olympic team and coached Perth Wildcats and founder at the Australian Institute of Sport. I was lucky to be Adrian's assistant for about 3 or 4 years. And I'll tell everyone how Adrian Hurley coached. He coached by narrative. He told stories about the team. He would come in and he would say, this is what our team's story is. And as Mick was talking, and Mick said, how does it fit into your plan, to your style? Well, you've got to consider the story of your team, which means where we get our shots, we'll run them here, we'll do that. Hurley was an amazing storyteller. And I think a lot of those old coaches were. Lindsay would tell stories, what Gideon told, and Simo would tell me about Lindsay. They would tell these stories. So you coach by the narrative, and your players want to hear the story of your team. And part of that story is pick and roll. And in the modern game, and it's a responsibility to show them, but then to show them how to run a shuffle cart and a flex cart, you know, and use flair and, you know, to play some of that. And now they go, oh, what's a UCLA cart? And in a way, then you can give them a bit of the history of the game. And, you know, we're really educating them to it. But the pick and roll is very important. We can't just say, you know, it's ruining the game, because it's part of the game.
Tim, have you got anything you want to add on that sort of traits of a coach? Or
yeah, well, I think, again, thanks, Grant. Grant, is that sort of answering your question with that?
Yeah, definitely. In a wide range as well. It was, pretty much just for all coaches and how we can continue to develop.
Yeah, okay. So, and make no mistake about it. I mean, and Mick made a point. So my friend is Andre Lamanis, and so I work with Andre with the national junior team, and Mick obviously worked with Andre professionally, and Andre and I have had a relationship for quite a few years. And as a mark of how good a coach he is, he did what Mick was saying, and he would ask me, you know, as a friend, to say, okay, let's just have a chat in and check in about the games. And he would really encourage me to tell him truthfully if I thought he was coaching, you know, his body language. Things like, you know, would say, I reckon you sat down and then you stopped coaching. You know, you're pissed off with that call, and you went and sat down, and there was a period of about 1.5 minutes, I reckon you stopped coaching your team. And he was open to that sort of stuff. Now, if a coach like Andre is open to that, that just says to how much, as Mick and Hannah, getting that feedback. Getting feedback helps you change, helps you modify, helps you grow. You've got to have feedback. All students need timely, effective, you know, and often feedback which is not just truthful, but it's also thoughtful. So the people that you deal with that give you that feedback, you know, that's really important. And I think if you're going to be pursuing your career in coaching, and at the whole time, is seek out feedback. And I think Hannah and Mick both said it. Once you seek out that knowledge and that feedback, then it's a matter of applying it, isn't it? It's like, how can I give this a go? But not having too thick a skin, not being totally up yourself all the time, thinking that, you know everything, because it's just not true. And you've got to be open to listen, as Hannah said in the first comment about her when she was at the college. You know, listen, and if they don't like what you hear, then that's okay. Don't take it personally. You know, you've got to be able. You can't have too thick a skin in that game. So, I think that mentoring thing is so important, and it's a mark of maturity as a coach to accept feedback. And a lot of that, and sometimes it'll be a bit difficult, could be a bit uncomfortable to hear how you handle pressure. If you got too emotional on the sideline, if you really lost it and you're into it with the refs and you forgot about coaching the game. I mean, what coach hasn't done that? And sometimes it needs to be said to you. Someone needs to be able to say that to you. So you got to be open for that.
Leads well into the next question from Tom Pottinger, which is, how do you diplomatically tell a coach if you're in a leadership role in an association or a club? How do you diplomatically tell a coach that their session has too much of their time talking and the kids standing around bored? How would you approach that sort of situation? I might start with you, Tim.
How do you diplomatically tell them? I suppose you could look. I was just wondering if you perhaps shut up a bit. Put a sock in it. If he could notice that the players are all gone to sleep, or they're cold, or they're putting their jumpers on, putting their dressing gown on. I don't know. I mean, truthfully, it's just sort of one of those things diplomatically that probably part of it is to implement that idea beforehand. So when the coaching planning meetings, to say, this is what a good plan looks like. Once you're going, you keep going, and then you're timed. Try to stick to your time limits in your practice, and you won't have time to go off script so much. So I think probably the answer for me would be to be nice, be considerate about it, and be tactful. I mean, we're working together. There's no point in just going and barging in and being rude to people. But I would say that where you're really effective is you outline those expectations, what a good practice session looks like beforehand, in your pre-meetings, and this is what a practice is like. And then if they need that gentle reminder, then you give it. That's the way I would approach it. Yeah.
Maybe Tim, from your junior development perspective.
Yeah, of course, we've all through the national junior teams and back when I was in the NBL, I remember working with the Falcons. We had the 2 cassettes up in the office and near the desk there, and Ken Cole had left his pistol in there. I think at that stage his gun was in the drawer, but that's another story. But the old VHS. What I would say is to reiterate something that Mick said, and I think video, when you have those video sessions, they're a great opportunity, to show, to educate, and practices are different, because you can educate individuals on things, and it can be a really, an educational experience. But it can also, you can manipulate your own team's psychology. You can be very persuasive by what you show them, as Mick was saying. You can show them another team, a team that you haven't beaten, or your team you might feel like your players are worried about playing them. You can show them, failing. You show them not being successful, and you show them that they're quite human and they're fallible. And that if you're coming up against a team that you might have a sense of complacency, well, you can show them being really effective. So you can actually manipulate what you show your team to sell the narrative that you want and to promote a particular psychology. And I think getting your players in the right mind is such a critical thing as coaches, that we're always fostering and nurturing and building particular mentalities with our players. And the video is just another opportunity. And so you have to be careful. You don't want to promote, gross negativity, or you don't want to promote overconfidence. You're constantly thinking about what that impacts your, the psyche of your group. So what you show is important. You have to give that some thought, as Mick was saying. It's, there are other means to other ends. There are other purposes in this. Oh, thank you. And I'd say I agree with all those things with Hannah. I think fundamentally competitiveness and motivation, your capacity to assess, are they intrinsically motivated? Do they have that competitive drive? And that means to want to test themselves, to walk towards pressure, to embrace challenges. I think those sorts of, that sense of the athlete is pretty important. I mean, also you deal with a lot of kids and that come through things, and I'm sure we've met them, the kids that are really good, and you think, I'm not sure if that kid really wants to do this, you know. I'm not sure if they really love it, if they really want to do that. And, you know, sometimes they're doing what serves their parent. They're doing what serves someone else. So I think that's important to distinguish and recognize them as a young person. And you'll meet the kids that are, you know, so motivated and so passionate about what they want to do. And I think it's, you know, being competitive and being motivated, having a fire within you for something is really important. I also think that you have to assess if a kid can impact the game in some way. And, you know, often we'll go, can they shoot? You know, or as coaches, we look at what kids can't do and what they can do. You know, we coach on the negative far too often. And, you know, I've been involved with a lot of selection of national junior teams and state teams. And I do despair sometimes that coaches are always talking about what a kid can't do and what they can do. That if a kid can impact a game in a unique way, if they're a lovely passer, you know, if they've got a really knack for something, I reckon that's something we should spot as well. I'm not sure what you think about that, Mick. I'd go back to a saying that Adrian would say, and that is the idea is, when we would, the story of the team, you come to practice, and Adrian was very even coach. And as a coach, I thought one of his great strengths was to not get too high or too low. He had a very even temperament. And for players like that, and, you know, it's carry water, chop wood. You do your thing each day and be patient and carry your water, chop your wood. And those sorts of things are to promote that where you get to comes about of the result of your process, as Hannah was saying, and to disappear inside that somehow, and to create environments where that's what your focus is as a coach. Because if you emulate, or sort of you display those sorts of characteristics yourself, if you are focused on the here and now as a coach with those athletes, there's a good chance that they will also be focused on the here and now, to carry their water, to chop their wood, and then to show them, as Hannah said, it's a great example, to show them exemplars of that. You know, who else has been like that? This player was like that, and look what they can become. And also there's a great saying, to become the player you should become, you know. So I think it's of the same notion. I hope that helps a bit, Jared. And it's a tricky one, isn't it, to how we sell that. But if the player has the right mind, the right sort of motivation to get there, and if the player is sort of that mindset, then they're interested in learning. And again, coaches have a part of creating that culture of learning. You know, if we model behaviors which are like that, about the here and now and not about long term, then chances are our players will be like that too, and especially the young ones. We do have to model this right sort of thinking for them in our roles as coaches. So it's incumbent upon us, to develop that.
These players, just to keep helping them redirect their focus around the things that they are capable of doing, that whether they make shots or miss shots or whatever the thing is, that is a mechanism for them to drop their confidence, that they still have a whole group of things that they can do to contribute, and they feel valued in the team's performance. I think that's a really big one.
That's right, Mick, because then you tell the story of if the story of the team says that we value that, this is one of the things that we believe in, and this helps us survive, this is what gives us life as a team. And then if it's acknowledged And coaches are smart enough to acknowledge that and accentuate that thing. And like you catch a naughty kid doing a good thing at school, and if a kid misbehaves a lot, and when you catch them being good and doing something well, it's amazing. If you can tell them that can help bring about that change. So accentuating the positive, telling the story, tell the narrative of how that fits in to the fabric of the team. And if you overlook it, then you've overlooked one of their strengths.
I think that's the most important thing, but really highlighting specific examples of practice. So here's one that we would do is when we scrimmage and play at training and then in games, we stat this stuff as well. But looking at, we talk about splits all the time or creating advantage. And so people often focus on, is it the guy with the player with the ball in their hand? Did they get a blow by? Or is it a pick and roll where they created an advantage? But, you can create the advantage by a really hard cut or holding your spacing and then hunting like you're going to receive the basketball for a shot. And so there's so many ways that a player, without having to do maybe somewhat of the highly skilled things using pick and roll, that they can actually have a direct impact on the outcome of the possession by just holding space, cutting hard, setting a great screen. But if you
that brings me to that point, Nick, that point that Hannah made earlier about enhancing the role of the assistant coach. And I think Hannah said that assistant coach can enhance. So the assistant coach is switched on in the videos, and that comment about, did you see that cut? Did you see what we did there? And even on the bench, the assistant coach says that play was set up by that cut there, and the team starts to be educated about that. And I think that's a great moment for assistant coaches to sort of, to enhance the team in that regard and to reinforce, the recognition of something like that.
Jimmy, anything to add?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I agree that, you focus on developing highly skilled players and developing players that are adept at making, good decisions, and the psychology of players, their capacity to compete, to move on from a mistake. I think that's really, if you're focusing on those aspects, then the system is okay, whatever, because as we said, the system keeps changing, and the styles of basketball. So what we need to do is keep giving the players the necessary skills, physical skills, and the mental skills to be able to compete and respond and to adapt, and their relationships. That's where it's at. And then they can go and manage whatever comes their way, because that ability to be flexible and to adapt. I do think we overlook the development of sometimes the mental skills of the players, that the thinking, the capacity to be resilient, and I know that one of the things that I'm most interested in, be interested to see if the other coaches are interested in, that is work around positive visualization, for our young athletes as well. I think a lot of these kids are, dealing with a lot of anxieties, or there's so many kids coming up with anxiety about performance and worrying about things and comparing themselves to other people. I think there's a space for us as coaches to, to get in and think about and how we can help our young players and our older players and professional players. A lot of them mask this stuff. They have these worries about things, and we really need ways to help them do that. So without getting too bogged down on just slotting someone in develop the athlete as a whole, and think about that, not just whether they can play that position, but how's their decision-making, their thinking, their relationships, their competitiveness. What to ask? I mean, I'm really enjoying listening to Hannah and Mick and what they have to say, and I find coaching intellectually stimulating and challenging, and it's part of why I'm still doing it. and one of the first questions was, how can you help in your club, coach? Another one, it's just part of what we should do. That's it. It's part of the fraternity of coaching, and it's incumbent on us to share and to listen and to keep helping the next kid along and to promote more coaches, young girls and guys who want to become coaches. And those players are there, and they might not be the best players on the team, but let's pick some of those and let's get great people coming through into the service of coaching, and do what you can to pass on what you know to somebody else and pay it forward. I think that's what we do. And tonight I sort of think of all those wonderful coaches. I've named a few, but there's all these wonderful coaches who I've coached with and coached alongside. And I saw Al McGautry's name there, and all these amazing people that I've become friends with over the years. And we are in that great fraternity together. And it doesn't matter where we are in Victoria or Queensland or over in New Zealand, doesn't matter. I've got a great friend right now. There's a Greek guy coaching in China and another friend who's in Italy. So it's just awesome, the world of basketball. So thanks a lot for having me on and to be able to share it all with you. So I really appreciate it.